Should you buy Gladiator with tokens? Should you use Spotlight caches to open up for him? We're going to look at that, plus some decks for this guy.
Gladiator.
Honestly, the card itself is getting mainly a negative reception. I think there's some things that they could change about this. First, looking at the card, the cost to power ratio here, 3 to 7, is fantastic. Just on the surface, I'm happy with that. On reveal, add a card from your opponent's deck to their side of this location. If it has less power, then destroy it. So basically anything that's 6 or less, you destroy. Now we're going to look at the cards that you're going to pull and still destroy, but it actually still helps your opponent.
We have fought before, Rose. You know you cannot match my power.
Oh, come on. Give a gal a little credit.
And we're going to look at some percentages here on what percent chance do you actually have to pull a card that is still good for your opponent. So the question about this ability though, one thing I will say, deck. This should be hand. Right off the bat, they should have made this from your opponent's hand. The fact that you're pulling from their deck, which yes, you're thinning their deck a little bit. You might pull something that's good for them. You might not. I mean, maybe you pull Chavez. Okay, then you're not destroying it. This used to be 8 power. I really think they probably should have left it there. I think that right now this card is like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of an impact, but we're going to look at some specific decks that could help. And we're also going to talk about a key on how to play this guy a little bit. So you've got a little bit of RNG for both players there. I really, like I said, think that they should have had it so that you're pulling from your opponent's hand. I think that would have been more painful for your opponent. Now, this is a shout out to Drew Barry. If you're not familiar with him, go follow him. Here's a tweet here. Great content creator. He had a tweet a few days ago talking about surviving Gladiator. And it's got a nice graphic here that shows all of the cards that are going to survive Gladiator. And I went through and counted these. And I also went through not just counting these, but some of the things he mentions on here is like some on reveal type stuff. Now these I'm not necessarily going to dive into, but I do want to factor them in. So the question remains is what percent of cards are not going to be affected by Gladiator? So the first thing you're going to want to think about is the cards that you just straight won't destroy because they're higher. There's 38 of them. And if I'm not mistaken, there's around 240 cards in game. Some of the websites showed that. Correct me in the below, but it gives you a percent, right? Now, 38 cards that are just straight up not destroyed, right? So that you're not factoring in anything else. That means that there's about 15.83% of cards that are not going to be destroyed by Gladiator. Okay, that's not too bad. I can deal with that. It's like, all right, I'm basically going to destroy almost everything that gets pulled. But now the things we have to factor in here. Drew Barry starts sort of talking about it a little bit with the on reveals he mentioned here. Valkyrie's kind of in that boat, but not really, because I think that if you play Gladiator before turn, I don't know, well, before turn 5 or 6, Gladiator or Valkyrie's kind of a surprise card. I think that still basically hurts your opponent. But the cards that will still help your opponent if you pull it, that's on reveal. We're going to go through them right here, right now, because there's a bunch of them. I got to take a breath from here. So these are any on reveals that if Gladiator pulls onto the board, what happens is they will still on reveal and then Gladiator destroys them. And that's how the card's going to work, which ties into some questions about how is it going to work with Alioth, Cosmo, I assume. So if Gladiator pulls out a Cosmo, is the on reveal already going for Gladiator, or does Cosmo interrupt it? Same thing with like an Alioth. If Alioth destroys Gladiator, does Gladiator destroy Alioth from the grave? Like, and what about Hulkbuster, Phoenix Force, all that sort of thing, assuming the Phoenix Force destroyed something. So there's these weird interactions, but that aside, you've got on reveals that if Gladiator pulls these out, they will on reveal and still help your opponent. All right, ready? Deep breaths. White Tiger, Mr. Negative, Brood, Sinister, Black Widow, Doom, Electro, Forge, Gambit, Squirrel Girl, Jubilee, Hood, Spider-Ham, Agent 13, Maria Hill, Snowguard, Korg, Rockslide, Yondu, Leader, Mantis, Magic, Masterbolt, Mirage, Moon Knight, Nakia, Akwe, Quake, Rhino, Sauron, Scorpion, Scarlet Witch, Sentinel, Shauna, Shuri, and Crystal. All of those cards are on reveals that he would destroy, and if they pulled it out, and if you play Gladiator against me and you pull out my Black Widow and destroy it, I'm like, okay, cool. You still got my my Widow's Bite. You pulled my Leader. Okay, well, my Leader now pulled your Gladiator, or I copied your Gladiator, so we're equal points. Cool. So it doesn't hurt anything. So of those number of cards, there's Well, and actually plus destroy cards. So if you pull Deadpool, X-23, Wolverine, Sabretooth, those all getting destroyed is a good thing for your opponent. Or if you pull Armor or Colossus, it obviously just doesn't do anything. It just sits there. Now, you still get a point gain, but really you don't, because you're pulling cards that your opponent had in their deck, so you're thinning their deck and putting it on the board for free. So these are additional cards that you're helping your opponent with. That adds an additional 42 cards back into the pool of 38 from Drew's list over here that Gladiator doesn't help you with. It hurts or you kind of, and really helps your opponent. So that makes the percentage 33.33%. Repeating, of course, that if you play Gladiator, you have a 33% chance to pull a card from your opponent that this is all cards in game that might not be good for you. Now, obviously, the percents are going to sway dramatically depending on what deck you're playing. If you're playing a heavy, like a Sauron deck or something that's got a lot of high cards in it, or a Hela deck, I mean, really, you want to pull Hela. You know, if you pull any other card, or maybe MODOK, it's like, okay, finally MODOK. You pull MODOK early and it maybe nukes everything. Okay, cool. Maybe that's helpful, unless you don't discard Hela as well. So there's some intricacies there, but generally speaking, as far as all of the cards in the game, there's a 33% chance that you're not going to pull something that is going to be helpful to you. That's a problem. Now, I think that one of the cards that you could pair in with Gladiator is Shang-Chi. That makes it so that, you know, you add 16 more to these cards. So basically you're destroying, well, 16 of these, which gets the percent down to like 9 as far as not adding back. But once you add back again, the add backs mean cards that, like the on reveals, like if you destroy my White Tiger, it's still beneficial to me. It's 27%. So to me, I mean, you're talking about a 27 to 33% chance to pull a card that's not as helpful. I mean, to you, that you've made a bad play or you've somehow helped your opponent. That's a 1/4 to a 1/3% chance. Like, I'm sitting there going, like, is that worth the risk? And I'm thinning out my opponent's deck a little bit and helping them play something for free. Like, oh man, like I don't know. So I wanted to bring that up before looking at the decks, because I think it's an important component to factor in when we're talking about this. Again, shout out to Drew. So let's jump into these decks real quick. And as always, shout out to Marvel Snap Zone Deck Builder, their tool. I absolutely love it. Copy it in game. It's fantastic. So first deck up, he's a 3-cost card. Of course, we're going to have to look at Surfer. So GladiSurf, right? So I've got Zabu in this to potentially bring some costs a little bit cheaper with the 4s. I'm not fully convinced that I'd want to keep that there, but I wanted to have a Wong in there or my Surfer. Obviously, anytime I've got Gladiator, I was talking about having Shang-Chi, so there were 2 4s right away. Well, I like Absorbing Man in case I want to on reveal double with Silver Surfer. Well, how can I do that? Maybe I put Surfer on 5. Maybe I play Sarah on 5 and play both on 6. We've also got Negasonic, who's kind of become a little bit hotter lately, so I like her on there. We got the Storm Juggernaut combo. I just like those in a lane. It's very nice. You clearly have Gladiator. You've got Brood. You've got Absorbing Man to potentially copy that. I have a Rogue right now as a 3-cost because there's a lot of ongoing happening right now. And I think having Rogue in this would be very helpful. So I like that. And then I mentioned the rest of the cards here. That's it. Nothing too complicated with it. If I'm talking about what I'd want to take out and maybe add in, I'd look at maybe, and I mean, look, the truth is any sort of Surfer deck, but maybe take out Zabu, Negasonic, Absorbing Man. You could add in Magic, Mobius, Werewolf by Night, Mystique. Like I said, basically any sort of Surfer deck. The next deck I wanted to look at, Silent but Deadly Gladiator. Yeah, I'm a child. I can't help myself. So this one is actually having Gladiator where maybe you don't necessarily want him to on reveal. So we've got a Cosmo. We've also got a Zero. All right, that's not too bad. And now you're bringing that in also with Shuri and Forge, because it's not just silent, but it could be deadly. So Forge helps it get a little bit more power. So now we're talking about a 3/9. Shuri makes it a 3/14. That could be absolutely huge. I mean, you're destroying almost everything in game at that point. I think that's phenomenal. And then you want just some partner cards here that go well with maybe a Cosmo and or Zero Shuri type situation. So with the Shuri, we've got Red Skull, Taskmaster, Vision. And then with the Cosmo, we've also added a Maximus in here. And we threw a Lizard in for good measure with the Zero. Now, this could tie into a Sauron deck, which we're going to get into in a second. So I'm going to look at that as opposed to alternates for this specific deck. So GladiSauron. GladiSauron? Is that a dinosaur? It could be a dinosaur. So this one, it was basically a Sauron deck that you've got Gladiator in. I mean, it's your traditional. You've got your Maw, you've got your Zero, you've got your Lizard, armor to potentially protect your Red Skull, your doubling up, etc. And you've got Sauron that you're hope to play on turn 3. You've got Enchantress to potentially bring out the or take away the ongoings of Typhoid, Lizard, or Red Skull so that your opponent are getting points from it. And honestly, with all the ongoings again, I think Enchantress in a deck like this is very beneficial. And then Taskmaster for the potential copy of whatever you're doubling. And Vision's just a great card to potentially double with Shuri in case you don't get one of your other lines. You can move it and then potentially Taskmaster. So I actually like this deck quite a bit. I think it could be fun. It started making me think that maybe there's something that you could maybe put Gladiator in with a null deck. You know, maybe it's a destroy and you're wanting to pull out an opponent's card. But then I was like, well, it's only going to destroy something that's 6 or less. Like, how helpful is that? And I wasn't sure. I was like, nah, I don't think you're going to really want to necessarily go that route. Maybe there's something there. Let me know in the comments below if you think that there's something that's true, like it's really going to be good. But I just didn't necessarily think it was going to go there. So let's talk about biggest keys for Gladiator and then decide if we want to either spend tokens on or spotlight caches for them. So the biggest keys, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of that you don't know if you're going to help your opponent or not. So you've got to find a deck that's going to really limit your risk for exposure or limit your risks. We've talked about a couple in here. Those are, I think, beneficial. I think they can play well, but you've got to find ways to play it because right now I just think it feels bad. I also still think that, I mean, if it's from the opponent's deck, I think this needs to be at least a 3/8. I mean, maybe that's too overpowered, but I think as a 3/7, they should change that to hand. And let's just see how it plays out. I don't know. I think that they should have left it at a 3/8. I think it's going to underperform, unfortunately. I think a 3/8 felt good. This isn't feeling very good. So that's the kind of risk. Now, do we want to buy this card? Let's look at the Spotlight tier list. So you can see them up here in the upper right. Now, the truth is it's bordering on solid for Save 4. This is a Series 5 card. And if it was Series 4, I'd say probably skip. But this is the problem with this Spotlight, is that it's got Mirage and Loki in it. And Loki is obviously a 4/5 now, but those cards are both really good. And given this is a Series 5, I think there's some potential for it to be buffed in the future because I just think it's going to fall short. I was like, ugh. Originally I had it as a Save 4 and I just started bumping it down and then I bumped it back up. This is where this is my opinion for you. So if you're a content creator, you're a spender, you're going to get this card because you're going to want to test it out. If you're somebody who has limited resources and you don't need Mirage or Loki, 100% skip. Just wait and see. I mean, look, you should do that regardless. You should wait several days, if not like till the last day to see how this card's doing. But I would lean towards skipping it. Now, if you're somebody who's sort of on the fence, who wants to try to semi-keep up with meta, I don't think Gladiator is going to rock the meta. I think and I was thinking about, can you put Gladiator in a deck maybe with Miss Marvel, something along those lines? And I'm like, well, there's already so many good lines with Miss Marvel. Why do I need to spend 6,000 tokens and or 2, 3, 4 spotlight caches to potentially get a card I don't even really like? So I think that depending where you're on that spectrum, I would lean towards maybe not spending on him. Again, I have it in this Save 4 category as a general, it's a Series 5. There are additional really good cards in here that I think are very beneficial. So if you don't have any 3 of those cards, then it might be worth pulling 1 or 2 to see if you get it. Now, I wouldn't go crazy and pulling 4 for them. I don't think it's worth it. You can see some of these other ones in December, though. I'm not super keen on at this point. We'll take a deeper and closer dive into those a little bit later. But right now, I'm just not necessarily a fan of them. I do like Annihilus, who's coming up. So you're going to want to be thinking about that. So that's what I've got for this video. If you made it this far, I very much appreciate it. If you want to further support the channel, please consider hammering down that like button, notification bell, that sort of thing. Comment, helps the algo. Until next time, we hope you have a wonderful day.